recently, I saw a family member of mine post something about not enjoying the new Home Alone movie after being really excited for it. And I knew that, like most things in my life, I needed to farm this for content. Despite the fact that Home Alone has always been a relatively popular series, and most of these releases performed well financially, it seems like a lot of people generally aren't aware of the Home Alone sequels other than Home Alone 2 and the new Disney Plus movie. But I am! I watched them on cable, baby! Back when cable was a thing and Netflix was the only streaming service and Disney XD was relevant and popular. Oh god. It's only been 10 years, and 10 years is a long time. God. I'm about to graduate. Oh, time is an unstoppable force. I'm gonna be left behind in the nothingness of its... God. Over the past 24 years since the second Home Alone movie, there have been 4 new installments in the franchise, with each flopping to various degrees. Home Alone 3 grossed over $30 million at the US box office alone, but was hated by audiences and critics alike, and almost won the Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Remake or Sequel that year. Home Alone 4 Taking Back the House featured all of the original characters but none of their subsequent actors, and had a bonkers plot that didn't fit with any of the previous films. It aired as a TV special, and pretty much no one has ever seen it. The 5th one reins in the story a bit more, but still feels empty and lacks originality, character, or heart. And the new Disney Plus original, Home Sweet Home Alone, has the lowest ratings of any in the series, and has been criticized for having a downright hateable main character. So it's not a question that these movies are bad, but rather, why? And before we can answer that, we need to answer why the first 2 worked so incredibly well. Based purely off story, I don't think anyone would have really expected Home Alone to be such a big hit. A kid gets stuck home alone during Christmas and has to stop a couple of robbers from breaking into his house. It's fairly straightforward and simple, but what it lacks in plot complexity, it makes up for in heart and character. John Hughes is an incredible writer, and can make even the most mundane stories entertaining and exciting. And Chris Columbus is an incredible director, who can drive meaningful and memorable performances even from inexperienced children. And they have a great dynamic together that shapes the feel of these movies. In fact, a lot of the greatest moments in Home Alone came from the balance that they had together. Chris pushed for the church scene, which to this day remains one of the most remembered and cited moments in a Christmas movie. John was great at making interesting plots and characters, but because of how fast he pumped out scripts, it was hard for him to focus in on specific heartfelt moments. And that's where Columbus excelled. So going forth from the second movie, the team was already at a disadvantage because they were losing Chris Columbus, who believed that the new director should be someone directing their first movie, like he was when he directed the first Home Alone. Passing the torch, if you will. The studio also decided to make the movie about new characters because Macaulay Culkin didn't want to reprise his role, as he felt he couldn't do anything new with it, and was starting to retire from acting for a while. Losing your star director and lead actor can absolutely cripple a film, and it did with this one. But the studio still wanted money, so they pushed on with new characters and a new director, but the story just didn't really work. There was no heart to it, nothing to actually make anyone care about the characters, and Chris Columbus wasn't there to help tighten up the script with Hughes, so it stayed. Home Alone 3 was essentially a hollowed-out version of the original. It lacked the heartfelt moments and well-written characters, and had pretty much the exact same plot. For folks looking for something like the original, instead they found an empty, soulless piece of corporate destruction. And the movie made more than $30 million at the United States box office, but goes down as one of the lowest rated in the series. People are going to show up to the theaters regardless of if the movie is good or not. A Home Alone movie is a Home Alone movie, and audiences love franchises. But the actual contents of the movie are going to be what decides if people stay or not. Even with the current state of the franchise, people still flood theaters for a new Star Wars movie, because even if it sucks, it's a Star Wars movie. But if the movie is something like Rise of Skywalker, a lot of people are going to leave feeling cheated out of their money and betrayed by the series they love. In this case, as bad and empty as the third one was, this is still the closest to decent we've gotten since the second. By the next movie, the production had lost its star writer too, and with none of the original cast or crew, it became a nightmare. The studio had realized they needed Kevin McAllister back, but with Macaulay Culkin still being in retirement, they had to get someone completely new, and decided to replace the rest of the cast along with him. So the movie had completely new writers, directors, producers, and even a completely new cast. And it was so bad that it got pulled from a theater release and instead aired as an ABC TV special. As bad as the third one was, it's clear that no one making this actually cared about it. Rewatching it, I seriously doubt the writers had even seen the originals. It's basically the first Home Alone again, but now Kevin's parents are divorced. And when he goes to visit his dad for Christmas, he ends up having to defend the house from Marv and his new girlfriend. Generally, it doesn't work, and there's an extremely noticeable difference in quality. In 2012, ABC Family execs said, "Hey, you know what sounds good? More money!" And they decided to pump out another one of these. Once again, no one returned to the movie, but after the incredible failure of the last one, ABC decided to once again take the focus off of the McAllisters and onto a new family. In this movie, the Baxter family moves into a new house, one that their son thinks is haunted until he discovers that a group of thieves are trying to steal an old painting from his family's basement. It's a huge deviance from the originals, but every time I watch this one, it genuinely upsets me, because I think there was so much it could have done well, but deliberately didn't. There were some big tonal shifts, and it could have been an interesting, genre-bending look at the series, but opted instead to be a formulaic movie that contains that specific brand of cringe that I can only describe as man above 40 who is always on Facebook is mad that teenagers are using the internet and wants to make something really dumb and soulless to let everyone in the world know and make it everyone else's problem. Like, it's like those boomer comics that you'll see everywhere that's like, how to click on book. And recently, the reason this video is getting made at all, we got the new Disney Plus special. This one is another super weird one, probably the weirdest in the series. The story revolves around this annoying kid who is accused of stealing a doll and gets left behind on Christmas. So the people who think he stole the doll break into his house, and by the end, everyone is friends and sharing Christmas dinner. Compared to the other movies, I can't even give this one pity points. Like, at least John Hughes tried to make the third one good, but at this point they're practically just desecrating his grave. The main character is a spoiled rich brat, but not in the way Kevin was in the original. He doesn't grow or change at all, and the movie wants us to care about him when we haven't been given a reason to. We've been given every reason not to.
I'm definitely a child in need. Neither this.
In the original, a big part of the premise worked because of how Kevin felt what happened was his fault, and grew remorseful. But the main character here doesn't even do anything before deciding to disappear. His mom just tells him to wait a moment when she's on a call, and he takes it personally. This kid has nothing endearing about him, like no redeeming qualities, nothing at all. He's just a jerk who learns nothing and is the same character by the end of it. It's easier to sympathize with the antagonist of the movie than the protagonist, because they're a middle-class couple just trying to get by, and he's a rich prick who just senselessly attacks them every chance he gets, like he's been planning this. The plot is weird, the jokes don't land, the music is generic and bland, like straight out of a Hallmark movie bland.
Mom?
And a lot of the traps and such end up being extremely brutal. Like, this feels a lot more like Better Watch Out, the horror movie reimagining of the Home Alone premise, than an actual Home Alone movie. Except it's much worse than Better Watch Out. The Home Alone sequels don't work because what they're lacking is any sense of purpose or awareness. They all follow the same formula with some new weird twists thrown into each one, when what made the originals compelling was their willingness to step outside of the box, and the depth and care that went into each moment and character. So we know that the sequels don't work, and we know why they didn't work, so where do we go from here? I like to think of it, somewhat ironically, like a house. This house had a solid foundation, but what's been built on top of it is rotted and hollow, so we need to throw that out and build a new house on that foundation. Making a Home Alone movie is actually pretty simple if you lean on the strengths of the originals. Kevin, like the protagonist of the latest film, is a selfish jerk from a rich family. But unlike the newest movie, we're given moments to make us care about Kevin and his family. Those moments need to be front and center at the core of a new movie. No matter how bad of people the characters are, they need to be likable. And the movie can't be too formulaic and bland, but it also can't be a huge genre deviation. It can't be a high-concept sci-fi political thriller about protecting a spaceship in the future, because that's not Home Alone. The traps need to be able to believably derail the antagonist, but not make the main character out to be a maniac. The movie also needs to be able to pull an audience without relying on brand awareness or cameos of older characters. It needs to rely on itself and its own story merit, and it needs to have real heart at the core. And ultimately, another big part of the first two movies was that they found something to say about the holidays, specifically Christmas. So the core structure would be a movie with well-defined and likable characters in a contained and confined space and genre, with an important message about Christmas for both the characters and the audience. Another core failing of the sequels is a lack of people, generally making it hard to believe that with just 2 or 3 kids, the parents would forget their kid. So the movie needs to be filled with characters and general holiday chaos. It also needs to be taken into a modern direction without being patronizing or demeaning. It needs to feel realistic without mocking the kids that'll make up the majority of its audience. And originally, I was gonna walk you guys through my story ideas for A New Home Alone and practically give it to you. But quite frankly, I have bigger projects to work on right now, and every time I try to make something small, it builds up and becomes a huge project. I have to work on college application films, and this video essay was supposed to be less than a minute. For whatever reason, a lot of people seem to have high hopes for the Disney Plus Home Alone, and I can understand why. In general, Disney tends to be held to a higher standard for at least its animated films, and given the monopoly's reputation, because this isn't a studio anymore, it's a monopoly, audiences seem to they could fix the slump the franchise has been in for the past few decades, or at least deliver a half-decent kids movie. But what we ended up with just felt like another broken link in the chain, and another example of money coming before art. The studios want us to care about these characters, but they haven't earned it yet, and until a movie in the series is made for a reason that isn't money, it'll stay that way. Hi there! I'm a filmmaker and essayist, and I'm using this channel to make video essays, little comedy bits, and pretty much anything I feel like. I want to analyze different pieces of media and spread a deeper understanding for general art and media literacy. If you like this video or you want to see what I do next, feel free to hit the subscribe button. It's absolutely free, and if you decide later on you don't like what I'm making, you can unsubscribe with just one click. See you next video!